Hi again, everyone. Again, my name for the recording, my name is Dafna Tachover. I'm the founder of We Are the Evidence, an organization that advocates those who became sick from wireless technology. And we're going to talk about why we do not know about these harms. Shortly after I became sick, Professor Deborah Davis' book, Disconnect, came out. And a quote in the book said, most of us want to believe that if cell phones were unsafe, we would have known about it. And then she writes, that is the biggest disconnect of our times. I cannot agree more, and we see why. So after I completed the Wi-Fi case in Israel to have wired internet in the schools in Israel, I came back to the US, and I wanted to dedicate my efforts in the US to find a way to create a breakthrough and bring change on this issue. Working with all these people who get injured, change is really cannot come fast enough. And so I spent a lot of time learning. You know, as an attorney, you know that facts are power, and I wanted to learn everything I can before I start working on it. And it became very clear very fast that our government actually knew that microwave-based technologies are harmful long before we ever commercialized cell phone and wireless technology. Government, all the armed forces, own studies, EPA studies, and we already have the human evidence, soldiers who have become sick with microwave sickness. So the evidence existed. Nevertheless, we went ahead and commercialized cell phone, telling to the public that there's no evidence that cell phone and wireless technology is causing harm. Then I decided to focus my effort in Congress. I thought, you know, how can we complain that Congress doesn't take action if there's no one on our side educating Congress? So I was there on July 14, 2016, when Tom Wheeler, the former chairman of the FCC, announced the fast tracking of 5G. That was my first week in Congress, and I spent the next 2.5 years lobbying and educating legislators on a federal and on a state level. There is really not a nice way to say it, but not only the wireless industry has conducted what I consider to be the biggest fraud on the public, this fraud was enabled by Congress and by our federal agencies, which essentially became a tool in the hand of the wireless industry, political and economic power. And by their actions and inactions, they enabled this fraud on the public. Now, the key strategy for the wireless industry was to control regulatory agencies around the world, including in the US. So around the world, in the WHO, they control the EMF project in the WHO, and the regulatory agency called the ICNIRP. In the US, they had to find a way to control the regulations, because if they control the health safety regulation, they will be able to continue and proliferate this technology without any interference. So the way the wireless industry found to do this is by passing what is known as Section 704 of the Telecommunication Act. This section is actually the way the wireless industry has enabled the fraud for the since it was past 22 years. So the first thing that this section did was to take the power to regulate the health effects from the FDA and from the EPA and give it to the FCC. The FCC is a spectrum auctioning agency. It is not a health agency. It does not have a health department, does not even have one person who is a health person. And the reason it was in the interest of the wireless industry to give this power to the FCC is because the FCC is a capture agency. And I suggest you look up a report that was done by the Ethics Department of Harvard Law School in 2016 titled Captured Agency, How the Federal Communication Commission Has Been Controlled by the Industry Supposedly Regulates. So this is how they controlled the FCC. And just to give you a few examples, the current head of the FCC is Ajit Pai, a former Verizon attorney. The former head of the FCC is Tom Wheeler, which I consider to be the mastermind of the wireless fraud. Tom Wheeler, before becoming the FCC chairman, was the head of the CTIA, which is the Wireless Industry Lobby Association. And I don't know if you remember, but Obama, when he was elected, he said, no lobbyists in my administration. Nevertheless, he put the biggest lobbies of the wireless industry as a chairman of the FCC. Not surprisingly, Wheeler raised $700,000 for Obama's campaign. Most disturbingly right now is the new appointment. So the third Republican appointment to the FCC Commission is Brandon Carr. So if you go to the website or look up his statement to the Senate, you will see that he said that his spark for public service happened when he was clerking for a judge, and he has actually constitutional experience in telecommunication issues. Sounds like the perfect public servant, right? So what he forgot to mention is that the experience that he has with the First Amendment telecommunication issues is when he protected the wireless industry, not protected, basically was the attorney for the lawsuit of the wireless industry against the city of San Francisco when it was trying to require warnings on cell phone in the points of sale. This is the kind of people that we have that's supposed to protect our health and safety. Now, Brandon Carr, by the way, has become the main spokesperson for the FCC on 5G issues, and we talk about it a little bit later. So that was the first thing that was done through Section 704. And the other thing that was done, in 1993, the first lawsuit was submitted against the wireless industry for brain tumor from cell phone. The share prices dropped, and the wireless industry had to do something to prevent future lawsuits and any discussions on the health effect. So in Section 704, there's a part saying that basically that takes the power from the state to regulate locations of cell towers based on environmental issues. Environmental was interpreted to include health. So what does it mean in reality? In reality, it means that if you have a cell phone, if they want to install a cell tower in front of your home, and you go to the city council and say, hey, I don't want that cell tower, they will tell you, oh, sorry, you're not supposed to mention health effects based on Section 704. That is unconstitutional. Now, that is not all. There is even worse. So there is a part of the section that says that if the council rejects the application based on health effect, the industry can actually sue the council. Numerous city council and municipalities around the country were sued based on that. That is actually punishing speech. Again, unconstitutional. So this essentially prevented any discussions of health. Any discussion of health effects. Now, not only you cannot object the locations of cell towers based on health effect, there's another prong to that. So let's say they put the cell tower and you became sick. So now you want to sue under state law for the damage that was caused to you. You cannot. So there's a Third Circuit Appellate Court decision saying that if they allow this lawsuit, this actually can cause a conflict with the original purpose of Section 704, and therefore the court ruled that people who got sick from wireless technology after 1996 cannot sue for damages. That is violation of our Fifth Amendment due process right, because you have no recourse under federal law and no recourse under state law. So this, as I said, enabled the fraud on the public and prevented discussion on health effects. And so where are we now with all of this? So the FCC has regulated it, and for the past, in 1996, they adopted guidelines of the IEEE, which is an engineer association. They may know how to measure radiation when it's passing through a wall, but they do not know how to measure radiation when it's passing through your body. And when those guidelines were when the FCC was suggesting those guidelines, all the health agencies objected those guidelines and continued to object those guidelines after they were adopted. Nevertheless, for the past 22 years, thousands more studies are proving that this technology is harmful. Epidemic of sickness, microwave sickness, cancer, reproductive harms, DNA damage, autism, ADHD, and still the FCC did not review its standards. That's where we are today. What about, and of course, while it didn't find the time to review those standards, it had time to fast-track 5G. Now, where is the FDA? So the FDA, as Dr. Ron Menick presented, in 1999, funded the NTP study, the National Toxicology Program study. That study was supposed to give us a final answer, whether or not this radiation is harmful. That study came out, $30 million, and 19 years later said, on November 1st, clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage. Now, the scientists, when the results came out in 2016, said that the public must be warned. Not only the public is not being warned, the FDA was actually trying to lobby to make it not clear evidence. And when the results came out, Dr. Sherman, sorry, I forgot the name. Sorry? Sherman, yeah. Dr. Sherman said that this study does not apply to humans. So we spent $30 million waiting 19 years to learn what cell phones do to rats so we can warn rats not to use cell phones. So it's clear that the federal agencies have abdicated their duties under the law to regulate this topic. So what about Congress? As I said, Congress did pass Section 704. However, it's continued to become a tool of the wireless industry, and right now we have 50 bills in Congress promoted 5G and other wireless initiatives. That means that about 1/3 of our congressmen are pushing wireless technology. So when I was working in Congress, very quickly after 7 months of day in, day out there, I started to conclude that that's not the place where we can create breakthrough. Well, that was until last night. So while I was preparing this speech, I got the most wonderful news. And Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut and Representative Eshoo from California wrote a letter to the FCC and said, you tell the public that 5G is safe. We want to see all the studies and evidence on which you made the decision to say that 5G is safe. It also said that the action of the FCC, including not reviewing its standards for the past 22 years, are unacceptable. Now, I'm really encouraged by this because Senator Blumenthal was the Attorney General for the state of Connecticut for 20 years. He also one of the attorneys that led the AG's action against the tobacco industry. So I think he means business. This is the kind of person that means business. And when I was lobbying in Congress, he was on the top of my list as the person to approach and hope to get a change. So I'm pretty hopeful. Now, a few more comments. So I think that this conference is about solutions. And so, as I said, I didn't think that breakthrough is going to come from Congress, but I might be proven wrong, and I'm happy about that. I think that there is, again, the approach I was taking was to increase the grassroots movement around the US, and that's why I was here for a long time, lecturing and awakening communities, and I think this is the way to go. Clearly, our Congress and agencies are captured, and it's up to us to take back our rights and protect our rights. Now, I think there's another bigger picture here. I think what we see is that we have a serious problem of money in politics. And that is really the problem of all the problems. And interestingly enough, Professor Lawrence Lansing from Harvard University, he is the attorney defending the city of Berkeley against the wireless industry, again, for trying to get warnings on cell phones. And he actually ran for presidency on the sole agenda of getting money out of politics. So I think all of us may need to think how we can promote that cause instead of each one trying to solve their own problem. I think taking on the money in politics cause is important. And I think that America needs to wake up and take action and bold action. Thank you.